Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, everybody can hear and see everything okay. If not, please message in the chat. My name is Wayne Chahansky, and I am with iQuanti. We are a digital marketing performance agency that specializes in SEO, content marketing, paid search, design development, and analytics. We're a global firm based out of New York, and I'm going to talk to you today about what we're seeing in the trends with our clients. We work primarily with enterprise clients as it relates to content strategy and the evolution of that content strategy. So we're going to jump right in. If you do have questions, any housekeeping items, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to address those after the webinar. The presentation will be available for any downloads if you want it. Feel free to reach out to us. There's going to be a QR code at the end that you can see any past webinars, anything else. If you enjoyed some of the content or what I'm speaking about or how I'm speaking about it, feel free to check that out as well. But with that being said, we're going to jump right in. So here we go. One of the things I want to discuss is how content has evolved a little bit, or how the consumer behavior has evolved as it consumes content. A lot of enterprise brands used to only focus on product or down funnel type of content. Some brands still do this, and all of the acquisition focus, of course, is in this down funnel content, which creates the conversion. So, this is the money content that's going to actually earn the revenue for your company. However, it's you need more than just the down funnel content. This upper funnel content is also important, where the big craze of let's create some blogs kind of came about. Now, by creating blogs is not necessarily the right approach from a strategic standpoint, but the concept of having upper funnel content that connects to the lower funnel content is critically important so Google can understand the topical theme of what your website is about or the pages that you're talking about are there. And then one of my favorites is I've heard many times over the years, I've been doing this a very, very long time, is well, we're going to create some SEO content. And let me just preface this by saying there has never been SEO content and there ever never should be. If you create content, you should be willing to invest in that content to make sure that it is read, engaged, and ranked properly. So we don't ever want anybody to create content that is just for what we're calling SEO or the bots. Matter of fact, you cannot actually have two different experiences. If Google sees that the bot content is different than the user content, you're going to get flagged and dinged for that as a negative signal as well. So everything that you want to create definitely needs to be readily available and it should be part of the product journey for your customers. You're going to hear me talk about that a lot as we kind of get into the overall customer journey and what does that mean and how does it relate to the content itself. In the years back, for example, we used to think that a user experience started at the homepage and finished at the shopping cart. Well, over the years, we definitely know that that's not the case, that people come in at all stages of the journey, which is where the whole funnel came about, the marketing funnel, that everybody's at a different stage. And if your pages are ranked well, every one of those pages becomes an entry point. So, one of the terms I kind of coin or talk about quite often is that if SEO is done correctly, every single one of your web pages is your home page. It's your entry point. So that's a good thing. You need to just understand the connection and how people move up and down that journey based on whatever entry point they come into. The second part of it is, up to the recent years, we thought everybody starts and ends on Google. That's no longer really the case anymore. What we're seeing in the industry based on the data patterns that we're tracking and what iQuanti has been able to provide is that discovery options for the users are much more widespread today. There's many more platforms than there ever used to be. And what's happening within the platforms, our attention spans as customers and consumers have grown shorter overall. And ultimately, these shorter content or attention spans leads to different type of content that's being consumed. The rise of videos or shorts has been very prominent in platforms like TikTok. And we're seeing that depending on the age of your consumers, We're seeing upward near 62% of people under the age of 30 are actually starting their search query or their journey on TikTok versus some other platforms. So, what we want to kind of understand the takeaway here is that there are multiple platforms, there's different content types, and we have to understand what that looks like for your company, for your brand, for your audience, and overall your journey as it looks. Here's an example. iQuanti does a lot in the financial and insurance space. So some of the examples you're going to see today are referencing some of that. But if you have a persona of an age of an individual um, that's looking to do some home remodeling and looking to remodel their kitchen, for example, their first stage of their journey, almost 9 times out of 10, are not going to be that they're going to go to Google and type in a home remodeling loan. Even though that's what they're ultimately going to need, that's not typically where the journey starts. I think our own behaviors can kind of reference and validate and understand that if we're looking to remodel our kitchen, we're probably starting with the creative concept. That's the most fun and exciting. That's what got you inspired. So you're probably on Pinterest or TikTok and you're looking at videos, you're looking at creative kind of layouts, designs, countertop choices, different patterns, different kitchens to kind of get the creative juices going. So your journey's actually started way before you got to Google. And then you might get into some YouTube videos or some Reddits or some DIY experts or some referrals from friends and some Google searching eventually. And after you've made up a lot of the decision, eventually you're going to get to the point of, okay, well, now I need a loan to do this. So if you're the loan provider, you have to kind of make the decision, how much of this discussion do I want to actually be part of versus just getting the tail end of this. Now, one of the things that I say quite often is in order to own the user, you really need to own this journey. So that's one of the things that we want to kind of keep in mind is you have to understand what the journey looks like and then how much of that journey you actually want to own or be a part of influencing as it relates to your content strategy. Again, different personas, different journeys, different platforms, different types of content that are coming through. So the key takeaway here is that journeys are now more fragmented than they used to be. So we have to account for that. Our content strategy needs to evolve today's age versus even a year or 2 years ago where it wasn't as prevalent as what it is now. I'm going to go through a couple examples that I'm seeing. One of them is if you typed in how to build credit into Google, this is the SERP results page that you get. You get 4 top questions for people also ask. Then you get 2 Reddit and 1 Quora in the discussion and forums. When you look at the SERP, what's amazing about this is that the first position, the first organic position, is below the fold. Now, this is unreal that, over the years, this is kind of happening. We've heard a lot about Google and bringing more rich media into the SERP. We've heard terminology like zero-click sums. How does this affect the CTR rates? What we're noticing is that in your position 1, 2, and 3, which is most of where all of the consumer behavior, by the way, I believe that's 47% of all clicks are in the first 3 positions across the board for users. So, but if these first clicks are actually below the fold, these CTR values are actually dropping. And that's why this is important to understand this part of the strategy is that your position 1 or 2 may not have changed or altered at all, but your traffic to the page may have shifted and decreased because you have other rich media snippets in the SERP like this that are pushing the organic position down, and therefore your CTR rate is dropping. So that's something that you need to be mindful of is how many of your keywords are being exposed, what's your risk, and what is the SERP doing as it's looking at this. As you look at this here, when we look at knowing that there's 4 top questions that people also ask, I would take this page and I would make sure that the anatomy of this page is inclusive of all of these type of questions. There's 4 different questions that are being triggered by this keyword. I would include these 4 questions in the anatomy and the content of the page. Make sure you have the right authority signals. Make sure you're doing the right relevancy match. But in order to be part of this discussion, you're going to need to make some changes to your title, H1's body, H2, so on and so forth. Basic SEO stuff. But the key here is strategically, you have to know what keywords are triggering what parts of the SERP and how you need to modify the content of your page to include that. Here's another example, how to build credit, same keyword on Reddit. You have posts. There's a lot of people talking about posts. Does your brand have any branded topics posting about this? Or communities. Are you involved in a community? Is your brand involved in a community? Have you created a community at all? A lot of enterprise companies kind of struggle with Reddit and Quora because it's an open free for all from a discussion standpoint, and you can't really control that. Maybe more small business and medium sized business can handle that risk a little bit differently. But some of the tips or tricks that you could do is you could create a customer care account and put on this, and then you could be part of these discussions from your brand standpoint as a customer care unit rather than trying to go in to influence the conversation on kind of a buy or a sales type of point of view where you may get some backlash. Again, Quora, how to build credit, again, the different types of results. These are all prevalent on here as you kind of go through this. And even in TikTok, you type in the same keyword, how to build credit. What's interesting about this here is you have an average Joe. This guy is Chris's Credit Tips. He's got a total of 62 followers, and he is ranked second on this keyword in TikTok. 62 followers, a no-name person. And when you look at everybody that's ranking, these are not brands that are ranking. These are people and influencers of some sort. So as a brand, how are you getting in these discussions? Are you part of these discussions at all, or are you just avoiding this conversation completely and letting other people kind of influence this? From a brand standpoint, you can have a brand post in here, and or that it's more of an and versus an or. But depending on your kind of risk tolerance, your and could be that you also bring in influencers that are ranking to help them talk about your product or service as well. But nonetheless, there's definitely an opportunity as some of these markets are really not tapped based on different keyword queries. Here's an interesting one on YouTube. Again, how to build credit. The top result in this YouTube result is 8 years old. Now, it is from a financial brand. However, it's still 8 years old. So to me, that makes an opportunity to say there's got to be something new and more relevant in this topic versus 8 years ago. And I'm sure Google would agree with that, but nobody's created the content to do that. Again, more availability. As we look at all of this, I'm calling this digital shelf space that's available in what we're saying the digital real estate. The digital shelf space meaning the different positions in the SERP that are available that are triggering positions that people are possibly overlooking. We talked about TikTok as a platform. We talked about the paid ads, organic. You have people also ask. You have AI overviews that are part of Google. You have Pinterest. And this list can keep just going on and on and on. There are several of these. I didn't put them all on here just to save the time. But I think you can understand what I'm trying to say is that all of these keywords are triggering different positions. These are different options for consumers to consume content. And you have to understand, what is your audience doing? Are they consuming all of this across all platforms? Are there some platforms that meet your audience segmentation better than others? What is happening as you kind of look into the data? So you really want to map out this data and understand what's happening with the journey and what type of content are they consuming and what platforms are they consuming. Example, when I get into what I call a product landscape, there are basic things that I do. What we do at Equanti is that we'll look at defining what that journey looks like from the product standpoint. And in the world of deposits, we find that there's a little over 5,700 keywords that requires about 197 core topics. Now, these core topics are based on keyword clusters on the same intent. Every keyword needs to be grouped together based on the intent. And so these 5,700 keywords are grouped into 197 different themes and every theme is a 1-to-1 ratio. So just to break that down again, what Google likes to see is that your content is matching the query of a user's. The only way it can match that query is if it's on topic for what that query is asking for. So the best thing to do is create a page for that topic for that query. When the topic changes because of the query changing, then you need a different page. So in this particular case, 5,700 keywords, 197 core topics, that represents 131 million in consumer demand or the search volume, depending on how you want to look at it. From a marketing angle, you might talk about consumer demand. From an SEO lens, you're going to see that's your search volume. And you can do this with all of your different lines of business. This is just basic keyword research and grouping and clustering of your keywords. But here's why this becomes important. As we look at each one of these LOBs, this becomes your North Star. This tells you what you have to do. In credit cards, I need 150 pages. In personal loans, I need 184 pages. Mortgage, I need 42 pages. And the volume is representative differently across each one of these. Now, what we want to be able to do is, of course, compare this to your content, what you have in market, and provide a basic content gap analysis. If you're supposed to have 150 pages, how many do you have? Do you have 50 of them and you have a gap of 100? Or is it flip-flopped that you have 100 of them and you only have a gap of 50? Either way, there's typically a gap, and you need to know what that gap is and how important that is to the journey of your customers and your audiences. Now, with this being said, this gap is going to create your content at a page level of what you need to create net new and what pages you need to optimize. But there's another piece to the story. And as we look at this piece of the story, we start relating this to the overall journey. Again, I started in the conversation saying that the idea here is not to create as much content as possible. We don't create SEO content. Blog content is not really a thing. Everything that we do is part of the customer journey, this product journey. So when I come up here and I look and say I need 42 topics or 184 pages, that's because I've done this research. I've done this work. I know the data science behind it. I've done the clustering, and I know what there is. And the idea here is to create whatever content is needed to complete this journey. As a user comes into your website, they're going to come in at different stages. One person might come into the credit scores page. That's their point of entry. And if you don't have a page that talks about credit score checking, that's going to be a loss. They're going to back out of your page because that's what's top of their mind. And they're going to go back to Google and type something else in. When they do that, they're going to go into somebody else's website and they're going to complete their journey and maybe make the sale with that other vendor, that other website. Even though you had the first point of attribution, you lost the actual sale because you didn't have the right content or the journey wasn't connected correctly. So the idea here is to make sure that all of the entry points are there and valid, and that you can move freely up and down the journey so you don't have any broken journey. That's the goal of this content, and that's the page gaps that we're talking about. So when we look at something like this, now of course our journeys are never this linear, so this is just illustration purposes, but what we want to look at is how these topics are connected to one another. And then what influence does different platforms have in which different stages? And what type of content are they coming to, and where's that content being connected to? So the idea is to take all of that data science that we just talked about and connect these dots. They're like little puzzle pieces on a board. Maneuver them, put them together, and kind of put a layout, a blueprint together of how these pages should be intertwined together. And what you're going to end up is something like this. You're going to say there's 197 core pages. That means I need 197 pages on my website to complete this journey from ready to buy to I don't know what it is that I'm looking for in that upper funnel awareness. 197. Now the pages aren't just enough. One of the things that we're seeing in the evolution of search is the 10 blue links just are not enough. As you saw, we saw that people also ask right in the beginning was pushing organic 1 rank down below the fold. So what we need to also take in consideration is the assets. And in this case, those keywords for this journey are triggering over 1,300 people also ask. So that means there's 1,376 positions on Google that your organic CTR is going to drop because the people also ask are there. In addition to that, our videos. There are 202 videos that this journey also triggers. These videos are taking up the SERP position again above the fold, pushing organic rankings down. So as we look at this here from a content strategy standpoint, it is absolutely important now to evolve your strategy to be far beyond just the pages, but also the assets. So you can have a page gap and then you're going to have an asset gap. And one of the things that we do is we want to understand what this looks like. So how do we do that? How do I know what keyword is triggering what? The examples I shared are great. They all make sense. But for you to go back and figure out what do I do? How do I do this? Is there a way to do this? There is. Every keyword triggers different SERP positions. Now, we're not affiliated with SEMrush, but SEMrush is a great tool. And one of the things SEMrush does allow you to do is check the availability of SERP features at a keyword level. There's probably some other platforms that do that as well, but I know SEMrush can give you this data. And what's important about this is if I'm going to create a video, I can look at this chart and say, oh, personal checking, this keyword triggers a video. So that would be a good one to create. Should I also create one for online checking accounts? Well, in this case, if I had to pick between the two, I would say no. It doesn't trigger a result in Google for this keyword. So why go through the cost and the effort of creating this? Now, of course, if I had an endless budget and we had all the time in the world and you want to create new content and kind of pave new territory and new paths, I would maybe go ahead and do that to see if Google would award that to you. But since we typically don't, and we're always in a prioritization model of some sort, I would look and say what's triggering the video and what's not. Beyond the video, this becomes a cheat sheet for your content strategy. Again, this is just a sampling of some keywords, but we can do this across the entire spectrum of your digital landscape. So this is something that iQuanti does quite often. We'll take your landscape, we'll define what that product journey looks like, and then we'll look at what's triggering what available assets in here. And the goal is for us to have something like this. This starts generating what we're calling a visibility report. So in personal loan, there's 1,628 keywords. 1,500 of those 1,600 are triggering people also ask. Look at the credit card column here. 1,881 keywords, but 1,811 of them trigger people also ask. So I get asked all the time about AI overviews. And AI overviews is something to contend with. It is the same as Answer Box when it came out in the SERP features. But I think even a larger risk that people are overlooking is the people also ask. They're much more prevalent in the landscape than the AI overviews are overall. So again, what you probably want to do is look at your landscape and then drive this here. Now, one of the things that we can do is we'll take your landscape, we'll do an inventory like this, and then we'll actually look at your competitors and yourself to say, out of the 79 AI overviews or the 1,500 people also ask, how many have you secured? And then it's just a simple division to give you your percentage of visibility. Surprisingly, both the competitors and most brands have a very, very low single-digit visibility report. Their visibility in this space is 2%, 3%, 4%. Very rarely do I see a 13%, 23%. Never will I see a 70%, 60%, 80%. Why is that? I get asked quite often. My personal take is that we're just a little bit new. People strategically haven't thought about this as part of their content strategy. I think it's going to catch up, and you're going to see that differently. But there is a strategic viewpoint here to go in and acquire these. So if you're interested in this visibility report, please email us, contact me or Iquanti at all, and we'll give you a complimentary visibility report, and we'll pull this out, and we'll show you the data of what your risk is and what your acquisition of this visibility is. Okay. One of the things when we talk about the videos, for example, is that we have 159 videos, 202 videos, all of these type of videos. How do we create 200 videos? They typically are really costly. They typically take a large lift and a lot of time. One of the things that we're doing with video is being able to scale this with AI. Now, the videos that I'm talking about in these SERP positions here, these are not brand videos. And I just want to make sure and specify that. We can do brand videos, but the ones that I'm talking about here are not brand videos. These are topic-based intent videos. So if somebody's looking for personal checking and there's a video, or what is a checking account, the video is going to be about what is a checking account. It's not going to be about your brand, and it's not going to have all of the famous actors and everything that you may have in an enterprise kind of brand video. The goal here is to scale and match this relevancy to acquire the SERP position in Google. How do we do that? We do that with AI quite often. And we can load the knowledge base either with your creative assets that are pre-approved from legal and compliance, or we can use some AI generative to create some creative as well. But what I'm going to do here is we're going to play a video and allow you to kind of see what we did with one of these. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit after. So again, that was just a quick example. Now the discussion can be, was it up to par? Did it make the cut from a quality standpoint? There could be some debate. I'm not sure. Every brand's a little bit differently on that. This met the brand standards of this example for that company. So of course it'll kind of change whatever we do. But again, the goal I want to just really emphasize is the goal is to be relevant for the topic. Again, like, what is a checking account? You're not going to spend $50,000 on creating a video for what is a checking account because it just doesn't have that type of value to it. But you do need a video in order to secure that position. So how do you do that? This is one of those ways that we can be very relevant and scale all of these video needs in using some AI assisted generation. So, okay. So how do we get started? I've talked about a lot of things here today, but I think one of the key things, there's three main things that I would say to get started is, one, you have to understand the key audience and the overall journey. You have to understand what the product journey looks like from a data standpoint, the clustering, the topics, and what an ideal state looks like for your journey versus getting into all of the bells and whistles and overcomplicating it. The product journey becomes your North Star. Once you have that from a data standpoint, you can kind of map and figure out what the gaps are in your journey. So you have to understand that. And then again, of course, what that looks like across different channels, different platforms. So you want to look at these assets that we just talked about and say how much is triggering what positions. And when we talk about organic search right now, the talk track has shifted a little bit. It's really more about organic visibility than organic traffic or organic search. I know ultimately we want traffic, but the impression share is going to be just as important as we look at acquiring these type of positions, that you may not get a click through, but you are getting that impression and you are getting that thought leadership. You can measure some of that from that visibility report as well. And lastly, creating a content strategy and a roadmap of knowing what creative assets that you need to do to kind of execute that. So when we kind of look at operationalizing this, one of the biggest things that I found that is really important is to have a real candid conversation of how much of this journey do we really want to own. If I tell you there's 197 topics and your content in those topics are spread across 8 different platforms, and there's over 5,000 different assets that you need to create, it's going to sound a little overwhelming. You're going to need to have some conversation of how much of that journey do we want to own, how much of those discussions do we want to be a part of, and how much of that do we want to try to influence. When you do that, then you can kind of understand where you want to attack. what positions do you want to attack, what platforms do you want to attack, and then ultimately that's going to drive your content plan. The pages we need in market published on your website, that's one thing, but the content assets that we need to pick up the video that people also ask, all of the discussion in forums, also different platforms, those are a different part of this. So you need an asset plan in addition to your overall content plan. And then, of course, you get into the design and development. Now, when you take a video, we can script that. AI makes it a lot easier. We can kind of re-storyboard that for different platforms, different sizes. TikToks obviously is not the same as a YouTube short or anything of that nature. So, but you can kind of keep the same topic, the same theme to attack that. The goal is to understand this journey and then to fill the content needs as wherever your consumers are actually looking to consume that content. Oops. And then the last one is distribution and ranking. Of course, Google, we all know, needs relevancy and authority. Other platforms have other trust signal factors as well. TikTok is really big on engagement, for example, and consistency. So you need the time on the video and overall engagement metrics. But every platform is going to have a little something different as how they measure what relevant content needs to rank higher than something else. So in all, that's kind of the plan here. Now, what I've done here is given you some of my information. Again, if you want that visibility report, feel free to email me, wayne.c@iquanti. The QR code is for any past webinars, and you can feel free to browse. All of that's free. You can download any webinar that you'd like to. There's a lot of topics out there. And with that being said, I'm going to open this up for some questions as well. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and I will try to address any questions that you have. Okay. I did have a question on a different platform here, or a different chat of somebody was asking, are all of the keywords, will you know all of the keywords, the different SERP positions? And that answer is yes, that you can actually take the keywords, the landscape that you create in your LOBs, and you can take that keyword landscape and upload it, and you can get a report of all of the SERP features it triggers. And then you can sort by those SERP features. So you can take your keyword list and say, okay, well, here's however many of those are actually triggering the AI overviews, or here's how many that are triggering the people also ask. So one of the things that we found as kind of some low-hanging fruit or quick win is that if you look at the content you already have published, how many of those pages are triggering people also ask questions that you just don't have those questions on those pages. So all you have to do is modify the page, maybe build some authoritative signals to it, but then the likelihood of you getting in there is much more relevant and easier to acquire than doing something brand new, net new. Okay. Okay. I don't know. I don't see any other questions coming through, but if there's not, feel free to email them in. Other than that, I really thank those that attended their time today, and we will follow up with any questions. Feel free to reach out with me on LinkedIn or email, and we'll let you go. So I appreciate your time. Have a great day.